Get ready to cheer on Team USA. Sign up for Xfinity Internet and get a Flex 4K streaming box free and Peacock Premium included. Can your internet do that?
Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Peacock subscription required.
Xfinity, proud partner of Team USA.
Implicate order. The implicate order gave rise.
Hello, this is Angela Thomas with a message about living life to the fullest. As a psychic clairvoyant, I often give insights to one's career path, financial situation, or relationship. Whether one is happy or not in their current situation, where he or she is right now is an important part of learning valuable lessons that can lead to fulfilling one's life purpose. If I can offer you insights, feel free to contact me at 636-278-2272, again 636-278-2272, or visit my website, angelathomas.org. I'm considered a psychic, so I provide accurate and detailed psychic readings for individuals as well as groups. Remember, no matter what influences your life at the moment, live life to the fullest. Stay in gratitude, count your blessings, and prepare yourself for more opportunities around the corner. I'm Psychic Angela Thomas, and my website is angelathomas.org.
Hey, hi there. Got your attention? I'm Gia Scott, and I was curious what you were doing from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time on Tuesdays. See, I host this really interesting little radio program that airs live then, and we bring in all sorts of guests. Authors, experiencers, and everything in between. It's paranormal and guaranteed to make you go, My guest list is always up at www.giascott.com, and do tune in to the Dawn of Shades from 7 to 9 p.m. on Tuesdays.
Breaking news. Strange black pyramid UFO ships over every major city on the Earth. People are exhilarated and scared. Reptilian strange creatures are beaming down. My God, they're beaming me up with them. Don't put that probe there. Don't put that probe there. Don't put a... Listen to the Judge of Mabus radio show at 11 p.m. Eastern, Saturday nights with host Jeffrey Pritchett, bringing you the high strange. Visit www.judgeofmabusradio.com. That's www.judgeofmabusradio.com.
Tune in to the Mind Cemetery with your hosts Chip and Nicole every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. We delve into UFOs, abductions, ghosts, aliens, conspiracies, and cryptozoology.
And how could you ever forget about those creepy topics you won't hear on your local news?
This is where I would insert my obligatory skeptical statement. The Mind Cemetery, where the paranoia about the paranormal comes to rest.
Follow us on Twitter and subscribe to us on Facebook. Also, check us out on our website, mindcemetery.com, for show updates and the critically acclaimed Mind Cemetery blog.
It's not critically acclaimed, but you should check it out anyway, mindcemetery.com.
Hi, everybody. This is Erica Getch. I hope to see you on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific on the Galactic Connection, keeping you connected 1 hour at a time. For more information, please visit thegalacticconnection.com.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Benetti, and along with Joe Montaldo, we co-host a new show called News on the Flip Side. You can catch us every Saturday night, 8 p.m. Central, where we will be discussing current events and topics going on in the world today. We have opinions on everything. There's no topic that we won't discuss, and we'll go places that other shows wouldn't dare. False history gets made all day, every day. The truth of the new is never on the news, but you can catch it here, News on the Flip Side, only on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Welcome to another episode of The Dawn of Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, and once again, we've got another fascinating topic tonight. But before we jump off to that conversation, we do have our usual announcements to make. For tonight's show, like always, I would love to hear from the listening audience. So please send your questions and comments to me at giascott@exogenynetwork.com. I promise I won't give out your full name or your email address, and I won't send you any spam. So don't be shy. I know you got something on your mind that you would love to have the answer to. And don't forget, there is a page on Facebook for all of you Facebookers out there where you can easily post comments, ask for future topics, see things from guests and future guests and past guests. I also have an author page where you can go and click like, showing me support for my written endeavors. And don't forget to email me directly, whether it's with questions for tonight's guest or about something else with the program. Send that email off to giascott@exogenynetwork.com. Now, tonight's guest is another author as we continue our author conversations series. This time, just to get your heart pumping and your blood flowing, it's an author who's delivered a novel with a lot of paranormal mystery, and it's also a thriller. So I've read the book. I enjoyed it immensely, but as the result of that book, he is guilty of keeping me up until the birds started singing to welcome the sun. So, without any more chatter from me, here he is, Steve Emmett. Steve, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself?
For those who don't know, you're talking to me over here in Britain across the pond, where it is about the witching hour. I am, as well as an author, an occasional book reviewer for the New York Journal of Books. I was born in Harrogate, which is probably the place that people know for that spa town where Agatha Christie ran away to when she had her breakdown. It may be something to do with the place, you never know, because I had one as well. I actually studied to be an architect, and I did build a few houses before I went off the rails, but most of my adult life I spent in real estate. I had my own agency dealing with Italian country homes, and in fact I lived in Italy for 10 years. That is, of course, why Italy comes into my fiction quite a lot. As I was born at the end of the 1950s, which makes me terribly old, I grew up on Dennis Wheatley novels and Hammer horror films and things like that. And I often put pen to paper, but never really got anywhere. I was always too busy with life. But I grew very dissatisfied with my career. I really didn't like what I was doing. I hated every day, and I wanted to do something different. So when Lehman Brothers changed the world in 2008, I took the opportunity to change it and started writing. So I took an online novel writing course, and I began writing Diavolino, and the rest is history, as they say.
Uh-huh. Well, you did a very good job with Diavolino. I have to admit that the name kind of, when I thought about how am I going to say that on the air, I had to think twice about it. Because it, you know, to somebody from America, it's kind of a tongue twister, especially since I didn't grow up in an Italian neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it does have kind of an Italian sound to the word. Does the name in particular mean anything?
Yep. I mean, Diavolino is a little devil. It's Italian for little devil. The devil being Diavolo, and the little devil has the ino on the end. I mean, the title, in fact, wasn't my original choice. I, for much of the time that I was writing the book, had a rather punny title, which was Terracotta. Terror as in terror, not as in earth. And everybody said, oh, you can't have that. It's far too punny and people will hate it. But to this day, I still don't know if it would have been better.
Yeah, terracotta. I mean, that. Yeah, I have to agree. I like the punny nature of that. But it almost, you know, when I think of something that would go with that, that would almost be a collection of short stories, sort of like small terracotta pots, all in a row.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I could always go back and do that.
Yeah, well, that's what I envision when I see terracotta, yeah. But there again, that's another set of imagination. Like before we went on the air, we were talking about movies as compared to books.
Yeah.
When you see a movie, you are seeing someone else's way of envisioning the story.
That's right.
And, it's interesting to see how other people see a story. Did I interpret the story differently than you? I didn't see it as, a lot of people, may see that type of a story as a battle between good and evil, but it almost was more primal than that. It really wasn't. I didn't see it as a good versus evil sort of story.
You didn't?
No, not really. I mean, there was an element of it there, but it was almost as though chance flew a lot into that, and not so much the good versus evil. I really didn't see it that way. And I'm probably in the vast minority in the fact that I didn't see it as a good versus evil sort of story. Because there is a devil sort of character in there, but it's not the devil as Christianity envisions the devil, the main guy,
No, and in fact I do refer to other, what shall we say, religions and mythologies as the story goes on for the explanation as to why this is all happening. And I particularly didn't want a devil that was just, the sort of Christian devil with horns. I wanted it to be more far-reaching because the area that it takes place in, and I mean the whole of the Italian peninsula, is just riddled with history, and different cultures have had their impact, and it just seemed wrong to me just to focus on one particular, one particular cult of death rather than bringing them all in and giving them a little bit of play in there.
Yeah, I actually saw that the devil in this particular story as being something far older than Christianity.
Yes.
Yes,
indeed. Yeah.
It was, to me, it really wasn't about the good versus evil because the heroes in the story aren't really holier than thou characters as we think of saints.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were sort of average Joes.
I'm not a big saint person.
Well, yeah, and to be honest, how many saints have you met? I've never met any.
I've never met any, and I'm not sure anyone ever has.
Yeah, even the people that I consider idols, I know some things about them that they probably weren't particularly proud of.
Indeed.
About their character and everything,
Which is very topical over here in the UK at the moment.
Oh, yeah? What is that?
Every day we seem to have some famous name who's been arrested for child abuse or something or other. So this whole cult of celebrity and so on is kind of under the microscope at the minute. Now we seem to have got a gap there. The line's fallen off, hasn't it? The line has fallen off. Now, who can hear me? Can Gia hear me? Can the listeners hear me? Hello, hello, hello. I'm going to start singing soon. Hello, Gia. Gia. I can't even see your little box there. I'm here, but you can't hear me. I can see you. Oh, should have brought me piano. I could have played a little tune.
Well, I'm back now.
Oh, good. There you are.
Yeah, that was just for a little extra excitement. The host disappears for a while. Just when you're about to tell me about the interesting devils in the UK politics.
Oh, what was it? No, it's not politics. It's the TV stars, celebrities who people have always idolized, who are finding that in their retirement years, things come back to haunt them from a long time ago. And it seems like every day we get the new one pop up that's been arrested for some kind of misdoing.
Oh. Well, the UK doesn't hold the cake on that. I mean, the tabloids are continually full of the arrests, illegitimate children, marriage dissolutions, et cetera, for celebrities here. So people have a huge fascination with these people. And I imagine in medieval times and whatnot, priests, which you have a priest in your character from that era, there was sort of this rock star quality about a lot of
them. Yeah, I don't know if people can hear me out there. Gia's dropped off again. I don't mean literally, but she's dropped off the line where I am. I think she was going to tell us that priests used to be held in high esteem. And I'd be inclined to say, well, they're not anymore, are they? I can hear breathing, but I can't hear people. Yes, the radio hears me. Okay. So I'll just keep talking then and wait for Gia to come back. Probably raising the issue of priests. Well, the priest that's in Diavolino is, of course, there because he sits across the divide between good and bad. And I wanted a villain, let's call him a villain, who would be able to bridge that gap. And for me, of course, where's Steve then? I'm here. No one can hear me? I'm here. I'm here, I'm talking. Have you gone? Gia coming back? Have I been talking to myself? I can hear you breathing, Gia.
Okay, well, I am back. I
can hear you, yeah.
And Steve, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Can't hear Steve again.
I'm here. I'm speaking. Apparently the public can hear me. I think the radio can hear me. Yeah? Can you hear me, Gia? Gia? This is fun, isn't it? Keep talking while... Okay. Okay, so my priest is a naughty priest, which, of course... Hello? I can hear twittering of birds. Here it would just be the flapping of...
Okay, hopefully I'm back.
You are back, but am I back? No, I'm not back. Yes, you are back, but you can't hear me. Maybe we should do a commercial break. And see if we can get the line.
into UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
To the Dawn of Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, and tonight we are talking with Steve Emmett. Now, Steve, before we get started in our conversation, you want to tell everybody the title of your book and where they can get it, and don't forget to tell them where your blog is located also.
Okay, well, the title is Diavolino, which, as you've already said, is difficult for Americans, but Diavolino, Diavolino, and it's available as an ebook and as a paperback. You can pick it up at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, just about everywhere. And if you want to come over to my blog, that is simply steve-emmett.com.
Pretty easy. Easy. Okay, well, we sort of took our break a little bit early due to some technical issues, apparently on my end for a change. And we were talking about your book, and I guess its comparison with modern society. Why do you think people enjoy horror stories so much, and things that really...
Things that scare them? I can't believe it. She's gone off again. Well, I'm going to assume that the radio can hear me.
Yeah, they should be able to hear you.
You're back now. You went off again.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm getting better at fixing it, I guess.
Okay. I was quite happy to keep talking last time, but your heavy breathing was putting me off.
Yeah, well, sorry.
It was like being followed down a dark street. Mind you, I should be so lucky. Where was I?
I was asking you why people enjoy horror stories that scare the dickens out of them.
I think everybody likes to be scared, even if they pretend they don't. I think it goes back to early times when we used to live in caves, and people were scared of the weather, almost anything, weren't they? They didn't know what it was. They didn't know how to explain it. And we have thousands and thousands of years of fear inbuilt into our bodies, into our minds. And these days, life, for most of us, is fairly safe. I know it's not for everybody, but, you know, better than the days when we ran around in bearskins and clubbed each other over the head for a carrot.
Yeah.
And we need to find, we need that kind of thrill that a really horrifying story gives us. And it's a safe way to do it. You're not going to die from reading a book. You're not going to die from reading a film. I mean, I say that a bit tongue-in-cheek because I'm old enough to remember when The Exorcist came out as a film. And certainly over here, and I'm sure over there, you had stories of people throwing themselves off the balconies in the cinemas because they were so scared. Or as they wanted us to believe, they were possessed by the devil at the time while they were watching the film. But generally speaking, it's a safe way to be scared. And I think that's why horror is so attractive to people. I wish that publishers as a whole would realize that and stop giving us things that don't quite cut the mustard, as we say over here.
Well, yeah, this is a big generalization, but in the United States, it seems like publishers believe that all women read all romances.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess men are supposed to read action novels, plenty of gore and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really not so sure because there again, I'm not that gender, so I'm not seeing it from that angle. But heyday was me. Not sure what that's all about, but yeah. But anyhow, women are no longer raised to expect that husband, house, and children as their sum total worth during their lifetime. Today we have all the same aspirations as men, basically, and maybe it includes marriage and maybe it doesn't. Maybe it includes children, maybe it doesn't. But it's like a lot of times the mass media, the Hollywood, the books and everything else fail to keep up with that. And even though in your story you've got a married couple with a child, they didn't have 1.5 children. There was no half child there. But the thing is that it was a somewhat traditional sort of little family there. But at the same time, you sort of took her out of the goody two-shoes role and made her a very real person.
Are you talking about the daughter or the mother?
The mother.
The mother. Mm.
The child. I mean, the child was, a child, but not a major player, but one of the backing players, you might say.
Yeah, a supporting role.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, it's writing about a traditional family isn't the easiest thing for me, because my own family that I grew up in was rather dysfunctional. So the sort of happy family scenario is a bit alien to me. But I didn't want to have a kind of wacky core family to it because of all the other things that were going on in the story. I think it would have been too much. But, when we come to the things that I'm writing at the minute and finishing off now, we've got a kind of different thing altogether going on there, where the emphasis is on something else, more to do with the dysfunction of the characters rather than this pulling of two sides to a story.
Or something very, very different from your first novel, then.
Very. Still dark, still horror, but very different.
No, that's a good thing, because otherwise it becomes sort of like 7 different kinds of chocolate cake. It's still all chocolate cake.
That's not bad, is it?
Well, having recently gone through a rash, I was just preparing to publish a chocolate cookbook, and having to cook all these things again and photograph them. We actually got to the point, it's like, oh my God, I hate chocolates. Literally 7 kinds of chocolate cake. Okay, so I happen to be at the moment, I'm like, chocolate, yuck. Which is hard to believe. The standing joke, for a long time I've been involved in the UFO and alien community, the standing joke was always that chocolate repelled aliens, and you couldn't be abducted if you ate chocolate. And if you were abducted after eating chocolate, you obviously hadn't eaten enough chocolate.
Enough of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this because it would make you so fat you wouldn't fit into the UFO?
Supposedly, I don't know how it started. It probably was, always a tongue-in-cheek thing, because the thing was, is if it didn't work, you simply needed to eat more chocolate.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with how fat you got or anything. As far as I know, nobody ever painted themselves with chocolate. I'm not saying it never happened, but I was always told eating the chocolate was the key. But, yeah. And I happen to be married to a chocoholic. He loves chocolate. We just had a little much on the chocolate front, I think, lately. Sort of like, Wimpy eating hamburgers. Nobody but Wimpy could eat them every day and be happy.
Indeed. Do they still have Wimpy? I suppose they do, don't they?
Well, actually, I was referring to the Popeye character, not... I've never eaten at a Wimpy hamburger joint, but that's where it got its name from, too, is the old cartoon strip.
Wasn't that where he got his name from, though? It's like the chicken and the egg. Which Wimpy?
Yeah, which way did it come? Yeah.
I think he must have been called Wimpy after the burger, surely.
I don't know. I thought the Wimpy's was called that because of the cartoon strip.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
So now because I was thinking that Popeye was older than the hamburger joint. Now I'll have to check that out at some point. Be one of those things that wake me up in the morning. Which is older, Wimpy's hamburger joint or Wimpy on Popeye?
Yeah. Which came first? But you getting too much chocolate and thinking, oh God, not another chocolate cake, is very much like I am when I'm looking for books to read. Because there is this big problem that we have that over in the US you consider some crime fiction, particularly serial killers and things like that, as suspense, don't you? Whereas over here we wouldn't necessarily do so. It's becoming a bit smudged because of, globalization and Amazon and so on. So when you're looking for horror, the number of times that you think, oh, that sounds interesting, and then you get I'm a big Kindle person, you download the sample and you find out that it's another serial killer, another detective story. And you think, oh, God, not another one of those, I just can't read any more of them. And this was one of the reasons why I started writing, because I like reading horror, always have done, and it was becoming difficult to find things that I actually wanted to read. And I found that there were other people out there feeling exactly the same way, which is how I got to know some of the other new horror writers that I now do know and class among my friends. And one of the books that I'm just finishing now, I'm writing together with one of those. We're doing a joint effort.
Uh-huh. Well, I find with the e-book thing, we're seeing an explosion of new writers that before the publishing houses controlled how many books came out, who got published, who didn't. And that barrier now has essentially been removed with the ease of e-publishing. But what I also see as a problem is the genres, as they're defined, don't clearly define often. Where do you find new adult? Where do you find a paranormal thriller? Where do you find a science fiction thriller? Are they going to be under science fiction? Are they going to be under religion? You don't know. And sometimes it's like a treasure hunt to find out how they got where they got classified. You don't even begin to understand how.
I think where the boundaries are a bit blurred, that does happen. I mean, it particularly happens with horror, as it so happens. There's a lot of places where you will look at the categories they have, the genres they have, and they don't have horror. And you think, well, it's not science fiction. So the other one they have is suspense and thriller. And of course, you know very well as a reader what you're going to get if you're looking there. You're going to get Detective Inspector so-and-so has just fallen out with his girlfriend and has a bottle of whiskey in his pocket, sort of thing, and goes off to find a serial killer, which isn't what you want, and it isn't where you want your horror book to be placed. And then you said then paranormal thriller. Now, what to you is the difference between a paranormal thriller and a supernatural horror? Is there a difference?
Not really. Not really, but you seldom see either category.
you do, in fact, seldom see either category, and that's the problem. There's a new website whose name escapes me at the minute, which is a kind of like Goodreads or something like that, a new one of those. And when I looked through it the other day, they don't have anywhere to put horror books. And I suggested that they needed a category for horror, which they've agreed to, thank goodness. But it does make it very difficult for people. And, I mean, for me, this thing of paranormal, you've got paranormal romance.
Now, I have to admit, that's given me the, just sitting and thinking about it, I'm like, okay, how do you have a paranormal romance? I mean, seriously, do you have a devil, a ghost? What? I guess I'm going to have to venture into that category and read a few books and see.
You see, I think paranormal romance, as a title to me, it isn't very attractive, but that's because of what's happened to it recently, I think. But if you look at the horror of the paranormal, of the supernatural variety, let's go back to the old ones, like, the old werewolf stories and things like that. In effect, they're paranormal romances because they're about a man and a woman and a kind of unrequited love because he has this terrible condition and so on, which is a paranormal romance, is it not? Today,
and the same thing with the vampires.
And exactly the same thing with the vampires, and even more in a way, because the vampire is such a sensual character. But today, that's become kind of werewolves and vampires of a kind of childish character, where they're not even threatening. There's nothing terrible, and you lose that. You lose that tension between the two main characters in it, and the paranormal romance today seems to be basically smut with monsters, as far as I can see.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting. It verges on bestiality, even a lot of times, because of the other species factor. Mm. And it is more, a lot of times it's more often what you would fall under erotica to me than it would under just straight fiction.
Yeah, I have, in the course of writing books, read some things which, I mean, I'm extremely liberal. I'm very open-minded, very liberal, but I've read one or two things that have made me cringe.
But at the same time, there's a difference in what you're going to put in your high school library versus, in the adult section.
Indeed. Yeah. Bottom shelf to top shelf, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that it kind of, you need some sort of boundaries, I guess, just so you understand what you're going to get, because not everybody wants to read that. If I was going to choose a book to read to my grandmother, I would really rather not read erotica to her. Now, she might enjoy it, but the thing is, I'm going to be really uncomfortable with this, because you can be all the liberal-minded that you want to be, but not everybody's comfortable in all situations with all things.
Well, I think it's important that it's clear what it is so that the buyer knows what they're getting. That's the important.
Yeah, and that's sometimes an issue. Sometimes I've been surprised. And sometimes it goes both ways. The cover implies that it may not be appropriate for kids, and I read it and I think, well, that's G-rated. Disney's played worse things than this.
Yeah. Quite.
So yeah, it does go both ways. People aren't always clear about how they're defining the category, and that's something that. Do you think authors themselves have any input into causing change to occur?
The authors who can really bring about change are the ones who have already established themselves. Because one of the frustrating things about being a new author is that you are required to work within certain rules. You can do this, you can do that, you can do the other, but you mustn't do this, that, or the other. Even though such and such an author who's been writing for the last 20 years does break the rules in this way, you can't do it. So you're forced to abide by a certain set of rules and to work within them. Okay, fair enough, that's how it is. But it's the ones who have got their name and who can do whatever they like, who can make things change. Some do and some don't, unfortunately. I think there's an awful lot of keeping it all in the family, not letting new people in necessarily, trying to, just this big money-making machine churning out books that are guaranteed to sell because everybody knows that they're going to queue up and go buy them, rather than taking a chance. So new authors don't get that opportunity as much as I think they should, because it's the new authors coming in that bring new ideas. Every walk of life, every business, every kind of activity requires new blood to keep it going. One day the existing authors, the big names, they won't be writing anymore for one reason or another. Largely because they'll hop off the twig and they won't be there to write any more books. And then what?
Now, you talked about established authors. You've got one book out. How many books do you think it takes before an author is regarded as established?
Well, I mean, you see some authors who appear to have been around forever, but you discover that it took them 15 years of writing books before they got one contract, or that they had 10 books published that did absolutely nothing, and it was the 11th that took off. So it can take a long time. It can take a lot of books. There are a few, I'd say the ones that have a bit of luck on their side, who strike it on the first one and do well out of the first one. And you get one-hit wonders as well, people who write one book that's really big, makes them, but they never write another one. Look at Harper Lee with To Kill a Mockingbird. There's one example. So you can't say it takes a number of books. I think it was Hemingway who said that until you've written 1 million words, you're not a writer.
Yeah, well, it may not be the number of books so much as the amount of effort, and perhaps the element of luck.
There is luck. I know people who absolutely deny the existence of luck, but it does exist for sure.
You look at the Harry Potter series. I guess that particular author wasn't doing well financially, had been rejected several times, finally was picked up, and look what happened.
Yeah.
It was an absolute explosion.
I don't know whether she would I don't know whether she does agree that it was luck. Maybe she does.
Well, in her case, there was a luck factor. I mean, what if nobody had ever picked it up? We'd have never heard of Harry Potter.
There's a luck factor for everybody. There has to be.
Right.
If you don't have any luck at all, you're not going to get anywhere.
I mean,
if you do.
Granted, to a degree, we all can create our own luck.
Yeah.
But it has to be the right book at the right time, published in the right place with the right publicity in order for anybody to make a bestseller list.
Absolutely.
And,
I remember,
granted, good writing comes into it, but if someone had written Harry Potter in the 1950s, do you think it would have flown? I don't. I will admit, I've never read one. I'm not much interested in that kind of fantasy. Well, I finally read one simply out of curiosity, because of the fact that there was such a to-do over the books and the movie and everything. I was like, okay, I've got to find out what all this is about. It's a nice story if you're 12, Isn't that your target audience? But why it took off with adults, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the very thought that there's Harry Potter books printed and bound for adults rather than children, I find astonishing.
Yeah, because and I think she even says that, her target audience was young adults.
Yeah.
Pre-adolescents, and that's the whole thing is that, sometimes you do see a book that's written for a particular audience, takes off and crosses over. The vampire bit, the vampire is absolutely nuts, but I think a lot of adults are like me and like, what, I've seen one too many. Anne Rice was fine, but, come on. That was a long time ago now. And now this sudden influx of all this new vampire stuff. And there again, it's geared for young adults and new adults. And that's not where I'm at. I mean, I'm not much younger than you, to be honest. I came along just a few years after you. And, the thing is that you do read different things at different stages. It's just the way life is. Your interests change. I just spent the last probably 15, 20 years where I read almost exclusively nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't until recently I went, I haven't read a novel in a long time. And started reading, making a concerted effort to read more novels. And found some great authors that I really enjoyed their books, and I read them, and I went, well, that was wonderful. I had a great escape. And too bad they don't have more of them, but I happen to be a voracious reader who reads very fast. So, then I go on and I'll find somebody else I like. And it's actually been great doing this author series because where I don't normally interview fiction authors, they're the exception rather than the rule, I'm getting introduced to all sorts of new authors that I didn't know about before.
Yeah, well, there are lots of us.
Yeah, just go through Kindle and see what's available, and the list goes on and on and on and on. If you just look at the top 100 in each category, you're going to look at thousands of authors.
Kindle is I think the problem with Kindle is that you don't have the ability to search by published authors and self-published authors, that they're all mixed together. I think it would be a great thing if you could actually search and give yourself two lists so you could pick out the published ones and the self-published ones.
Right.
You can waste a lot of time going through and finding things that aren't suitable.
Yeah, I've downloaded a number of books and looked at them and said, huh? And it is disappointing. But I think even among the ones that have chosen to self-publish, we're going to see a gradual cleaning up, you might say. Because it's like they're showing up to church now in their cut-off shorts and flip-flops and not editing and not proofreading and not checking their grammar and spelling. Errors that people are taught in school to fix before they turn in their work.
Yes.
And I think we'll start seeing more adult behavior, you might say, among the self-published authors, where it'll be much easier to pick out the good versus the bad, you might say.
I have come across some good self-published books.
One
of them is going to actually be published quite soon. It's no longer a self-published book. You can't get it, and it's going to be published. And that started out as a self-published book, and that's going to be, I'm quite sure, big. It's not the only one I've come across, but there is a lot there that does need to be improved and wheedled out, shall we say.
Yeah. And I come from a long line of cookbook collecting women, And so looking at the cookbooks on Kindle, I ran across one that is still held in my head as the epitome of bad book. It was something called Stuff on a Stick or something like that. And when you got done with it, you wondered why you had, it was free, but you wondered why you'd wasted that much on it.
It was free, but you wouldn't have.
You still felt like you'd been cheated, I mean, it was really, really awful.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of going, or books telling you how to, and they're in English, but I think they used Google Translate to get it there. Anybody who's ever used these automated translation services, they're not particularly accurate.
They can be quite hilarious.
Oh, yeah. If you really want to entertain yourself, translate something from English to simplified Chinese and then, pick a language, and then back into English. You'll be dying laughing because it is nothing like the original message that you translated. And it kind of gives you an idea, sort of as a dramatic way of demonstrating it, how bad an automated translator can be. Because simplified Chinese seems to manage to really mess it up, and then putting it through another language and back to English, it bears nothing whatsoever. common with the original statement.
And some things you can't beat a human being.
Definitely, and that's one, and when you're reading a book that's supposedly written for an American audience and it's written in this really poor English that is so ambiguous that sometimes you wonder what they really meant, and it's a how-to book, then you're kind of going, no, this shouldn't even be. It's awful. And, I don't think anybody likes to leave a really awful review. I've left a few in my day. But sometimes they need to have an awful review.
I've done some awful reviews for the New York Journal of Books.
I used to never, ever feel bad about it. Do you feel differently about it since you've been published?
To be honest with you, I hate giving a bad review. And there are certain circumstances where I would just rather not write the review than write a bad review. But if it is an established author with a big agent, with a big publisher, and they put out the book for review, and that book is way below standard and what you would expect, I think they have to take the rough with the smooth. I think they deserve to have the truth told.
Yeah, I have to admit, probably one of the worst reviews I ever wrote. It was for an established author, whether he had an agent or not, I don't know. But I read the book, and it was so boring. I don't even remember what the book was about or what it was titled, other than it had something about the dead in the title. And the only thing, when I got done with the book, that seemed to feature as an important part was this snake that was hanging out by his stairs.
Now, this sounds like the Garden of Eden.
And
Sure it wasn't the Bible?
It's all about. I was like, this is a book for the dead. It was awful.
I rather like books with dead in the title. The line went dead when I said that.
Okay. I think I'm back.
You're back. Am I back?
Maybe not.
You are back. You are back. Am I back? I can hear you.
Okay, Steve, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I don't seem to be able to hear Steve. Let me see if I can fix this. Okay. Am I back?
You're back. Am I back? But Gia, you can't hear me, can you? Okay, so it looks like I've got the show to myself now. So where were we? Gia was talking about... what was she talking about? Are you back, Gia, now? No, I'll just keep talking. We were talking about reviews and whether it's good to write a bad review. And I don't get much pleasure out of giving a bad review, and I wouldn't give a bad review, to a new author or somebody starting off. I'd just rather not write the review. But I do think that there are times when the truth has to be told, because if people respect your writing and they respect your views on something, they want to know. They don't want to buy the book thinking that you found it was okay. What I need to do is probably move on now, and I can't ask you for a question because I don't have control.
Okay, Steve, are you there?
I'm here. Are you there? I am. I'm here, Gia.
Steve?
Gia, I can see your picture there vibrating.
Okay, I cannot seem to hear you.
I can
We're
hear
having some interesting technical difficulties tonight.
you. See?
Okay.
Having people blocking me out here, you see. We were talking about luck, and it's fled. It's got around in the Atlantic.
I can't hear. And we're not taking a break. Okay. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
I cannot hear Steve at all. Let's try this again.
At the moment, I'm just lost in space, for those of you who can hear me. They're trying to put this thing back together, trying to patch us through again. I mean, it's not bad considering the distance, is it? I think the public can hear me.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Steve?
I can hear you, Joe, yeah. I think the problem is Gia can't hear me.
That's weird, too. They're not even having no bad weather up there or anything. This is one of those weird things. What are y'all talking about? Are y'all talking about something the government doesn't want anybody to hear? I mean, I've been listening. I said, they're not talking any conspiracies. What the hell? Usually you get this kind of stuff when you get like a government witness on or, you know, one of them ufology people or, you know. I've been on pick on ufology people since I do it myself. That's one of them things. Let's see if we can get Gia back. She might just need to reboot things. I say, y'all, everybody go over to Dawn of Shades and make a donation, buy Gia a new computer. I'm serious. Y'all go over, make a donation. Oh, there's Gia. Can you hear us? Gia?
She's gone off again.
Gia. Yep, look. Everybody go to Dawn of Shades and buy damn Gia a new computer. You got an extra laptop? Send it to her, y'all. Come on. Tell her to take that thing and throw it in the garbage. See, I hear Steve great. I have not, Steve, by the way, you haven't dropped not even one time the whole show.
I haven't. Well, there we are.
Not once. Except the one time I dropped y'all and brought y'all both back. Other than that, neither one of y'all have. Your audio has been 5 by 5 all night.
Maybe I should do the program and I can interview Gia.
Yeah. Let's try to drag her back in here with us.
She's gonna shoot me when she comes back.
When she hears the archives, she'll have to listen. She's gonna be wanting to know what the hell I'm doing here. Gia.
Is Gia back with us?
Gia.
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hello? I think she got a virus.
She sounds a bit hoarse.
Yeah, but maybe, because she was saying earlier she was getting runtime errors. That's usually a virus that causes that. She must have a virus on that computer. They might have got one in their network or something. Might be why they're having computer problems. I didn't see it. Oh, like I care about Twitter. I gotta say it, man. I love when stuff like this happens. Live radio, the whole world can listen to us. 188,000 people going, what the hell are these two guys talking about?
I've just been asked who I'm talking to, so obviously they can hear me, but not you.
We can hear, but not real well yet. Hold on just a minute, and we will try and fix this.
Here we go.
Oh, and she's dropped off. She did sound as if she was in the bathroom then.
Yeah. Now, maybe they have a network issue over there. I guess what we'll do is we'll get a chance. We'll take a break. Guys, y'all are listening to the Dawn Shades. Hopefully, Gia will be back with Steve when we come back from the break, and they can get more into the conversation they were having. Because I had just heard them talking about reviewing books, which I'm always interested in, because, I like to see who thinks what of what books, and sometimes it comes out to be interesting. But anyway, let me put y'all over to the more... Number 2, good chance for promotions while I'm thinking about this. Remember, got a new show starting Friday night. It's going to be in... Through the Keyhole's old slot. Through the Keyhole has moved to Monday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Really, I think Karen's going to probably double her listening audience there. Monday's just a good night for radio for some reason. Friday's slot is now going to be going over to Knowledge of Spirit with Jesse Bravo and Alex Cox, who's out of the UK. Both of them are psychics, so we'll have them both on the show and see how they're going to go. But their show premieres this Friday, by the way, May 10th. So come check it out. And remember, Karen's going to be on Mondays now, so be sure to check her out there. Also, this Friday, Citizen Sane with Sasha Christie, who's from the UK also, and Guy Will, who's, of course, a Yankee Doodle dandy. And then you have Erica Getch at the end of the night, rounding it out. So anyway, look, I got to plug off those shows on Fridays. I don't like that. Don't forget, guys, I'll be live tomorrow night. Actually, we'll be discussing some of the do's and don'ts in ufology tomorrow night. So y'all be sure to check that out on UFO Undercover. But anyway, let me get out of here and let y'all go over to the
Paranormal Radio Network.
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith Show. Hi, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal...
Welcome back to the Dawn of Shades. This is your host, Gia Scott, again. And maybe technology will be our friend tonight now, Steve.
Well, I can hear you, Gia, but you sound like you're in the bottom of an aquarium.
Yeah, I think the echo is dying out now. It's kind of a, that paranormal return effect. Yeah.
Yes, it's gone now, yes. Right, I've got all my fingers crossed now.
Yeah, well, I've dropped a level of technology. I'm now connected via the telephone. Okay. So it should go a little smoother now. But I do have a long list of questions that came in via email for you. And the first question is from Ricardo in England. And he wants to know, how did you come up with the story, and is any of it based on real life?
Well, I came up with the story because as I said, I was living in Italy at the time, and I wanted to write a supernatural thriller, and I have this great interest in history and in the workings of religion, and the atmosphere and all the things I had on the doorstep were just perfect for that type of story. And that really is where it started off. I overlooked a lake. In the lake there were 3 islands, and I thought, well, how about if we had a 4th island that was kind of mysterious and had been kept quiet for a while. And that's how I built it all up. Did that answer his question? Was it in 2 parts?
Yeah, it was in 2 parts, but yeah, I think that does answer his question. And so, if you're ready for another one, they want to know if you're going to write a sequel to Diavolino, and whether you've ever written a comedy. And that was from Sharon in the UK.
I haven't got any plans at the minute to write a sequel. I'm not ruling it out, but I've just got other things that I want to do first. I think I said before that the next 2 books are quite different. They are dark, they are horror. One is about halfway through. The other one, which I'm writing together with another author, Julia Cavan, who's another British horror author. We're coming close to the finish on that one. And we classify that as a psychosexual thriller, so it's something quite different from Diavolino. And I want to explore the kind of psychological aspect a little bit, but I may go back and do a follow-up to Diavolino at some point. And the second part of the question was, have I written humour? Well, I've been pestered to write humour because people keep telling me I'm funny. I don't know if they just mean that I look funny, or that I am funny. Anyway, they say, oh, you really should write humour. So I put together a little humorous booklet, pamphlet, which is called the A to Z of Understanding Italians, which picks out all the sort of idiosyncrasies of the Italian people that I came to know so well. And that actually has been doing rather well, of all places, in Italy. It's been number one on Amazon Italy in a number of categories for the last couple of weeks.
Uh-huh. Well, that does sound rather humorous. You know, it's funny how we develop prejudices about people from different countries. In my own case, it came from working with tourists. And the epitome of rude to me was Russian immigrants from New York City.
Okay.
That was the absolute rudest people I had ever had to deal with. Some of my coworkers disliked the Italians or the French or the Swiss, and it seemed to be kind of random, as though it was a particular group that exhibited a behavior that really irritated someone. And I think that was what the prejudices came from.
Right.
And in my own case, I know what it came from, a busload of Russian immigrants from New York City. And whether it had anything to do with being Russian or not, I lived in the West at the time, and social mores are very, very different between the two sides of this continent. And they were doing things that were perceived as very, very rude. They were very aggressive and pushy in wanting answers and service and so forth and so on. And so instead of letting us respond, we felt like we were, being shoved up against the wall. And that was what irritated me so much is, you couldn't even answer before somebody was trying to rip out your throat.
Yes.
And I think it was the same thing with everybody else, why they had a prejudice against a particular country.
That sounds a bit like being in an Italian post office on pension day.
Ah. Yeah, so I haven't been there. It doesn't sound like I want to be there.
But I wouldn't say that my A to Z of Understanding Italians is prejudice. It's just a bit of poking gentle fun because I love them to bits.
Right.
I'm not one that actually likes prejudice. I think prejudice is a terrible thing. But I kind of smarted the other day because I said earlier that I don't have heroes. I'm not into idolatry and that sort of thing. But somebody that I respect a lot is the late Christopher Hitchens. And I've read a lot of his books and watched a lot of his talks, and he's someone that I really admire. And the other day I saw an old interview with him where he was talking about prejudice, and he was saying again how it's wrong and he doesn't support it, but to tell the truth, he doesn't like people from Yorkshire, so it kind of didn't go down very well with me.
Yeah, and maybe prejudice on the choice of words is wrong. Maybe stereotype is a better way, because we have built up this generalized stereotype that represents various things, people, objects, whatever. When I say cup, you vision a certain type of cup, and it may not be the same kind of cup that I have in mind.
And mine may float over, and yours may not.
Well, see, I see more the mug. That's because it's typically what we use as a coffee mug. But yeah, and the whole thing is that we see very different things. So we each have this stereotype is kind of another loaded word, but we each have our own vision of what a cup is.
And, you know, the same thing if I say, you know, Italian, you have one vision of the generic Italian, which is it based on any one particular person? No. Is it particularly accurate? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how close real Italians, you know, each person is to that little image you might have. When you think of Americans, you probably think of them one way. Even my name, Gia, most people envision me as an Italian model for some reason. I have no idea why. In reality, I'm middle-aged, short, and dumpy, you know, with gray hair.
You sound like me.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is people have this image because they hear my voice. They don't know what I look like necessarily. Mm-hmm. And even my picture, you know, obviously I don't put up a picture that I consider unattractive. And I have to admit, the picture I usually use these days is at its 10th birthday, I think.
Well,
it's probably time to give it up.
The one you sent on my website is not even in focus, Gia.
Well, that was kind of the idea, too. You know, and there again, you know, because when I envision Gia, I know what I look like in the mirror. And unfortunately, now when I look in the mirror, I don't see me anymore. I see my mother. You know, they even put a picture of my driver's license now. I don't know what that's all about. Some sort of conspiracy, right? Yeah, the aging conspiracy. But yeah, you know, and that's the thing too, is that, you know, this imagery that we attach to things is different. I mean, you know, my husband probably has a far different picture than me, than I do.
The thing is,
because he didn't even know me at 20, you know.
Yeah, but people make things funny, and I think you have to be relaxed enough to be able to laugh at yourself. If you can't laugh at yourself, if you take exception to people who do find you funny, I mean, as I said, people find me funny. They laugh at me all the time. It doesn't upset.
There's a huge difference in laughing with you and at you. You know, I'm living in the South, and I've lived in the South and Southwest, the southern half of the United States, my whole life. And there's a certain particular stereotype that's associated with the Southern American, namely that we're dull-witted and lazy and uneducated and so forth and so on. It's not a very attractive stereotype. And at the same time, I will tell jokes about that stereotypical person.
Yes.
You know, sitting around in front of the shack on the porch with a lazy hound dog playing the banjo and drinking moonshine. I have never seen anybody that looked like that ever in my whole life.
No, that's because they're all here in the north of England.
But if someone tells that joke tells those jokes in a mean way, especially if they're not from the South themselves, it's perceived as ridicule. And ridicule is not funny when you're the victim of it.
Yes, there's a fine line.
Fine line.
Yeah, absolutely.
But humor is also the grease, as it was put to me, humor is the grease over the speed bumps of life.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
If you can't laugh, you can't live.
Right, and humor has gotten me through some of the toughest times in my life, because even when things are really, really gruesome, if you can find some humor, it often gives you that extra little push, and it's literally the grease over that, you know, bigger than average speed bump.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether you're standing in manure up to your knees or, you know, you're standing on a red carpet, if you can't see the humor of the situation, it's going to shape you in ways that you may not want to be shaped, I suppose.
Oh, I'd love to be shaped.
Well, on that note...
certainly a different shape to the one I have.
Well, you know, the way I tell people, round is a shape, right? So, you know, yeah.
Oh, dear.
Moving on to the next
another question.
Diavolino is a horror story of such epic theatricality. What inspired you to work with such a grand canvas and its array of twisted demons? And that came from Xavier in the UK.
Okay, right. A grand canvas, crikey. I mean, I didn't see it as a grand canvas when I was doing it. It was just really second nature. All the places in there are basically real places that I know. So it wasn't to me probably
even
as
that
daunting.
dark spooky tunnel, the dark spooky tunnel, you know.
Yeah, the dark spooky tunnel. Yeah, the dark spooky tunnel is there.
Yeah.
The kiosk is there, the pizzeria is there, the islands are there, the Vatican, as you know, is there. Even the tourists slurping the slices of pizza off the cardboard plates are there. It's there. I just put it together. So to me, if it's come out as if I was working on a great big canvas, then I'm really pleased about it. But it was kind of second nature. Where I had to put the real work in was the plot, the story. But all the pieces, all the painting by numbers was there for me.
Okay. And now we have another question. You recently reviewed a book for New York Journal of Books and commented, "What makes Cousin Kay stand out from the crowd is not the story itself, but the story combined with exquisite writing.
Yeah.
What are the challenges, considerations in your own writing that enable you to develop an intriguing supernatural tale that is conveyed with exquisite writing?"
That's a nice one, isn't it?
Yeah.
For me, the point of a book is more than plot. There are so many stories that I come across where there's a good plot, there's a good story, but it's what I call workaday writing. You never come across a phrase or a sentence or a paragraph that you think, God, that's really nice, that's worth underlining, that's worth cutting out and putting in a frame, it's worth keeping, it's worth remembering. It's just ordinary everyday writing. And what I try to achieve, and because each work that you do, you can progress and get better and better, and by reading more you can get better and better, is to provide a good story, but also make sure that the actual language you use, the sentences that you construct, actually provide a little bit of enlightenment or a bit of inspiration in themselves. I wouldn't want to pick out anything from my own right now, but maybe that one talks about Cousin Kay, which is the latest review that I did for the New York Journal, and it's one of the kinder reviews. I could just read you one little bit from that, which really shows what I mean, I think. Yes, if you look at this, the main character's talking about when his elder brother, who's very close to him, leaves after a brief visit to the family home. And this is how he puts it. "A restless swallow, my brother left at dawn, taking his springtime with him. I can still hear the voices, the laughter, visualize the bright swathes of daylight, the figures like wisps of mist, a whole fairy tale detaching itself from the walls of the manor and abandoning the place as though inhaled by the fast disappearing car. The grandest of dreams lasts no longer than a sigh. The slightest thing transforms it into a pipe dream. As the rumble of the engine faded, the landscape itself became barren." Now, isn't that wonderful? Or is it just me? I think I could cut that out and put it on my wall.
That is, because you're thinking about what he's saying, and we've all at some point watched somebody leave where it was as though the color went out of the world, and we were suddenly thrown into this really barren landscape.
Yeah.
Because they'd played such a major role in our life. And yeah, that's very picturesque.
It's fabulous, and so much better than describing visually what's happening, which so many people would do, tell you about how the car was driving away in a cloud of dust and he was feeling sad. It does it in such a good way, and that's what I try to do, to combine. I mean, if only I were as good as Yasmina Khadra, who wrote this. Maybe one day I will be, but at least that's what I strive to do, is to give a good plot with good writing. And if in one of my novels there's 1 or 2 or 3 phrases that people say, wow, that's really nice, then I feel like I've done a good job.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that's really interesting. Now, the next question that we have, that one I just read was from Rhonda, and this question, I'm not sure who it came from, to be honest, and it is, please describe your interest in the supernatural and how it came to be. Did you have nightmares as a child or just a very active imagination?
No, I was sent to Catholic primary school, and if there is a breeding ground for fear, that has to be the greatest one. I remember being in church every Thursday afternoon. We had to go to church. I remember kneeling in the church and hanging up over the altar were these great oil paintings of winged demons and dark clouds and blood spurting out of wounds and contorted faces and pain and weeping women. And it puts the scarers up you when you're a kid. And I think that's where my need is to kind of in a way exercise those demons by writing about this type of thing and reading this type of thing. It is a fiction. I don't believe in any of it. I've grown up and I realize it's a fiction, but it does make great stories, you have to admit.
Oh yeah. And I think about, you're talking about Catholic primary school being a breeding ground for fear. I didn't attend one. I went to public school, but I did encounter nuns in the town where my grandmother lived, and I would go stay with her on the weekends, and she would usually take me to the movie on Friday night, which was a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And Friday or Saturday night, because we didn't have a theater where I lived. And we'd go see the movie, and sometimes the nuns would be there, and there were these scary women in this funny clothes. I'd never
scary penguins, yes.
Yeah, I mean they were frightening, and the things around their head, it looked like it was pinching off their face, or their face was floating and not really connected to anything else. They were just terrifying.
Yes.
They were weird. And the more people explained nuns to me, the more frightening they really were as a little girl. They married God. I mean, come on, that's really, really weird to a 6-year-old or 7-year-old. That makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
You don't marry.
Well, because it is senseless, isn't it? It is senseless.
But it made no sense to me certainly, but I was an odd child. Okay, I got asked not to come back to catechism. It had to be Protestant catechism because I didn't use those same words that I do as an adult, but they're explaining me the whole Holy Communion thing, and I'm like, that's ritualized cannibalism. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, I got sent home, and they asked my mom not to send me back anymore. It wasn't something that a 9-year-old's supposed to point out, and it definitely didn't make the teacher very comfortable in a small town. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was an interesting experience. But the whole thing was I was an odd child. I saw the world in an odd way, and sometimes when you see the world through a child's eyes, often you see it in a very transparent way. Things that we've allowed to become shrouded in mystery, the kid sees and points out unthinkingly.
I mean, children are susceptible to being molded, and this is the problem. If they're told strange things and strange things are put into their heads when they're young, it can have a negative impact on them. I can give you an example, and I can even tie it into your story about nuns. When I was at that school, a girl who sat next to me, we're talking about when we were 5, 6 years old, but I remember this very well. The girl who sat next to me one year was from the orphanage which was run by the nuns. It was part of the church, and they had this house, and the nuns ran the orphanage. And she used to sit next to me at school every day, and she used to tell me how she hated being there, that they used to beat them, they used to lock them under the stairs, and she had bruises and things. And she was very sad and so on. And you grow up, you leave school, and you don't keep in touch. I don't know if you remember when, in the 80s, we had a serial killer here that they called the Yorkshire Ripper. And he was picking on prostitutes largely in West Yorkshire and doing them in. And one night the news came on and showed the face of his latest victim and the name, and it was that little girl that used to sit next to me at school.
Uh-huh.
I mean, she had no hope. She had all hope beaten out of her at the convent with the nuns. Thankfully, that place is closed now.
Yeah, and we've heard really horrific stories about the residential schools or boarding schools in the United States that were often by various religious organizations for Native American children, and some of the things that have gone on there. So that's been, an ongoing thing in both the U.S. and Canada for some time now.
Yes.
But getting back to our questions, because we've got a lot of questions.
Okay.
We're going to move on to, you are a proud Yorkshire man. How has this influenced your writing? Do you see your writing career developing in horror or some other genre? And that was from Alice.
That's in 3 parts, isn't it?
Yes.
No, I'm not a proud Yorkshireman. I'm a proud human being, and I would say I'm proud to be European. I don't even say I'm proud to be British. I feel European, and I don't subscribe at all to the regional prejudices and the Little Britain kind of attitude. So I'm a European who happens to have been born here in the UK. How has being a Yorkshireman affected my writing? It hasn't at all. But I do have this wish to write a story which is based upon the mining industry in Yorkshire, which is virtually extinct now. But I have this hankering to go back to a period when the mines were very active, when the communities were there, and to come up with something dark and dingy in that kind of atmosphere. And then the other part was, how do I see it developing always in the same genre? Well, I think, as I've said, I do want to explore the psychological. I shall always, I'm sure, come back and have a dig at religion and bigotry and prejudice and so on, because I think it's something that we have to continually keep having a go at and exposing. But other than that, I don't know. Humour, well, I suppose I'll have to do that. I do have a novel in mind, which is a humorous one. But humour and horror, the 2 H's.
Well, there's always the possibility of some dark humor.
There is indeed. Dark humour is possibly the best. I love it.
Well, I happen to have a background in law enforcement and corrections.
Mm-hmm.
And, dark humor tends to be the humor of the day. And in one case, we had a murder in the prison in which I was working. And one inmate had virtually chopped off another man's head with a shovel at the throat. And it happened in the multipurpose building near the men's room, I believe. Now, the multipurpose building was a metal building, and it was creepy and spooky and really icky to have to do a security check on at night when there was nobody in there and the lights on, just you and a flashlight. Because in a prison, obviously, you're doing continual security checks to make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be and nobody's not where they're not supposed to be. And I was, at that point, a lead officer, and I was sending somebody else down there to do the last check of the night, which was the creepy one when nobody was in the building. And it was just a day or two after this murder. And I lived in an area where there was a lot of superstition about places where people had died and dead bodies and whatnot. And he didn't want to go there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really blame him because, like I said, I didn't like to do it before the murder happened because it was just a creepy, creepy building. It always made a lot of noises, and it had recreational equipment in there, so there were these looming shapes and shadows, and it was awful. And then add in, the usual spiders and bugs that lived there, and it was like, you hated having to go in there. And, he's like, what if, I don't remember what the person that had been killed, what if so-and-so's ghost is dead? And I gave him some cough drops and a Tylenol tablet. And he said, what's this for? I said, if the ghost is down there, you give him this because he's got a hell of a headache and a sore throat. Well, it was really, really dark, twisted humor.
Yes.
But by saying something like that, it made it a little less frightening. Because he did laugh, he took it with him, and he went.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you had to poke fun at your own fear, because otherwise he was going to go down there and he was going to see a ghost, because that's what he was, primed for. And it already, like I said, the building was prone to make you see things move that weren't moving, and so it was already.
Sounds like a great place, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was just lovely, especially around midnight, yeah. It really was. It was creepy. Probably one of the creepiest buildings. It was warehouse-like a small warehouse, and it housed recreational equipment and other bulky things that needed to be stored somewhere. And that's where it went, was this multi-purpose building. It also had like an indoor gym area. So it was this looming space with these smaller cubicles built along the bottom, and you had to check on top of those. It was creepy. Lots of shadows. Lots of shadows. And as you would move your flashlight, it would seem as though the shadows moved, and it would make your heart jump because you never knew when you might find somebody there. And that was why you were checking it, after all, right?
Yeah.
So
you should write a book about it.
Maybe someday. So going on to the next question, does being a humanist affect the way you approach writing about the supernatural? How do you get in the mood for writing horror? How do you get in the mindset of wicked, sometimes cruel characters? This is a long one, so keep holding your breath.
Yeah.
Do you base them purely on your observation of others, or do you ever delve into the dark areas of your own mind? Do your characters stay with you when you leave the desk at the end of the day, or are you able to leave them behind? And have you ever been shocked by what emerges from your own imagination? That came from Julia.
Okay. Could you just go over the first few words of that again, because your voice went a bit wobbly.
Okay. The first part of the question is, how does being a humanist affect the way you approach writing?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I take it that humanism is well known in the US. Any listeners over there will know what we're talking about, or should I run over that?
You might kind of define what you mean by humanist, so that everybody's absolutely clear.
Okay, putting it very simply and quickly, humanists don't believe in an afterlife. They don't believe in a supreme being, a god or anything. We believe in we have this one life, and we have to make the most of this, and we do good deeds to each other because that's the way to live, and that's the way we all get on and create a decent society. So that's what she's driving at there. As a humanist, how do I get on writing about supernatural things? Well, as I said, it's entertainment. It's fiction. It's entertainment, and I have absolutely no problem with it. I don't think you have to believe in it. Enid Blyton didn't believe in people with big ears and gollywogs that drive cars and things like that. And I'm sure Stephen King hasn't believed in half of the things he's written about either. Authors don't have to believe in something as a reality just to write a book about it. So for me, writing about the supernatural and writing about horror in that way is perfectly normal, and it is a way of exercising some of the junk that was put into me when I was younger. Yeah. So I am a humanist. I belong to the British Humanist Association, and today I sent off my letter, in fact, to the bishop asking him to excommunicate me. And when I sent it, I thought, I wonder how many of those we get.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second part of the question was what? Just refresh my memory. Oh, have I ever?
Okay.
Do I draw on characters that was that? No, remind me.
Actually, it was how do you get in the mood for writing horror?
How do I get in the mood? I'm always in the mood for writing horror. I can always see the possibilities for bad things in almost anything. You know, just going around the house, cooking, or anything, being in the garden. I can always find something dark in whatever I'm looking at. So I'm always in the mood. When it comes to some of the really psychological stuff, like the things that I've been working on recently, I find that reading the previous day's work and then trying to get in the mindset it's tricky. There's a bit where you look at it and you sit there and it's not actually happening. But once it happens, it comes out. But when it's come out, I'm absolutely exhausted. And does it surprise me, any of this stuff? Not really, because I don't take it that seriously. I don't ever look at any of the fiction that I've produced and think that any of this stuff could really be true. It is fiction. I turn off the computer and it's gone. So those characters and the things they're doing, they don't live with me. But that doesn't mean to say that I'm not thinking about them, because I think as a writer you do actually, you live and breathe what you're doing, but it doesn't actually take me over. It's not like method acting or anything. I mean, God forbid I'd be in prison if it was.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. And then the next part was, let's get to the right part. How do you get in the mindset of wicked, sometimes cruel characters? I think you kind of covered that, at the mood thing.
Yeah.
And so do you base them on your observation of others, or are they strictly from the darker areas of your own mind?
It's a mixture of the two. I always say that anyone who crosses my path can never be sure when they'll appear in one of my stories. But at the same time, yes, I do draw on memories, things that have bothered me in the past. I always draw on those. But the basic characters in any story are at least 50% real. I could probably give you a real person's name to correspond with each character in the book, but as I don't want to get sued, I won't do that.
Well, a lot of times you need to create this generic, base that it becomes your character. And I think people do base it on somebody they know. It may not be that person in their entirety, but it may be certain facets of their character, and then you, of course, give them the twist that your fictional character has.
Exactly.
But for the picture in your head, you may use a particular person's face and body, but, it's just as though you selected them from the Sears and Roebuck catalog, really.
It may just be a mannerism.
Yeah, Then moving right on, Alex sent in a question. How did living in Italy influence your writing, and whether you could have set Diavolino anywhere else? I don't think it would have worked anywhere else. I mean, you needed those things that were so Italian.
Well, if it had been set anywhere else, it wouldn't have been called Diavolino. And I needed, it is so important to the book, is the aspect of the Vatican, the Catholic Church, the issue of selling indulgences as they did. So really, it couldn't have been set anywhere else, no. And therefore, the influence of living in Italy on that book was total. And it does influence my second novel, which also takes part in Rome. And that one is split between ancient Rome, the time of Nero, and present-day Rome. So there are two books there where Italy has had a big impact on it. The third one, which I'm writing with Julia Cavan, doesn't have any Italian connections. But the one after that, which I started and need to finish, does go back there a little bit. So I think it will always come, because Italy has been such a big part of my life. I mean, as I said, I feel more European than British anyway. But I've been going to Italy regularly for 35 years.
Uh-huh.
So the influence is bound to be there, I think.
Yeah, it'd be like me setting things in the American desert or in the American South. It would make sense because I've spent huge chunks of my life, and I was born on the plains. So, I've got almost the whole U.S. to work with myself. Now, on the next question comes from Susan, and she wants to know if you wrote an A to Z of the British, would it be as funny? She refers to A to Z of Italian.
Yes. Well, it would have to be, wouldn't it? It probably wouldn't be as easy for me to write, because I don't know the British probably as well as I know the Italians, but I could very soon tease out the funny little idiosyncrasies and make a book. Yes, I think it would be.
Yeah.
I mean,
now the next question I have to throw in there is:
go on.
Is there an A to Z of Americans in the works?
Is it a request?
Well, it would be interesting to see,
It probably could be funnier than the Italian one.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have such wonderful stereotypes in the United States, for one thing. I mean, from the Texas oil man to the southern ne'er-do-well to the, hard-scrabble farmer from the northeast. Just one stereotype after another.
Yes.
And they're all parading around in all their glory with their own dialect. So, life gets funny enough when you start mixing things. I can easily imagine an A to Z of Americans being very amusing.
I would have to go. I mean, I have spent a fair bit of time in the States when I was younger, but I would have to go back and spend a while there in order to write it, because that's why the Italian one works, because of the tiny little details that people recognize when they read it. So whilst I could probably do an A to Z of understanding New Yorkers, I might need to spend some time in the country to be able to cover all the other states.
Yeah, well, if you decide to, make sure you put a small town in the South somewhere on your list. Yeah. We bought a house in a small town in the South the end of last summer, and it's been interesting because I haven't lived in a small town for some time now, and my husband never had, and I'm very much a small town person, but I had conveniently apparently forgotten, sort of like between two children, you forget some of the things, I've forgotten a lot of things about small town life. And, every now and again I want to just scream and throw myself down on the floor and just really have a good tantrum, because I'm like, wake up, it's all the coffee. I mean, come on, this is not 1947. Yeah.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
Small towns are, I think that may be a worldwide thing. I saw it very clearly in the Avellino. Small town people don't like change. They find it very threatening.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes I'm amazed I came from a small town. Then I remember I came from a small town, but I always felt very much an outsider. So maybe that's why. I was different right from the get-go. So, that's an interesting facet of small towns, is that their aversion to change. But moving right along in questions, this one I think you've kind of answered already, but it comes from Louise. Diavolino is clearly horror. Will you always write in this genre? What other kinds of books call to you?
Yeah, well, I think I have said that. Yes, I always like dark books. I like good supernatural thrillers, ghost stories, and psychological thrillers, and of course something that makes me laugh. I do read quite a lot of non-fiction as well, and I wouldn't mind doing something like that in time, but not just yet. I think for now I'm quite happy with scaring people.
Scaring people, yeah, that's a lot of fun. Now, the next question is, kind of goes along with this. It's a three-part question. It comes from Ellen, and the question is, what do you find so appealing about the horror genre? List 3 things that make Italy unique from the rest of Europe, and if you were only allowed to keep one of your own books, which one would it be and why?
Oh, gosh. Keep one of my own books. Well, I'll keep Diavolino because it's the first novel I had published, so I'll keep that one. That deals with part 3 of the question, doesn't it? And the first bit was, what do I find so appealing about horror?
Yeah.
What do I find appealing about it? I like to feel fear. I like to feel scared. There's not a lot scares me these days, but it's kind of the search for it, which is also part of the thing, the journey of trying to find something that can actually scare you. And it doesn't mean scared in the sense that you want to pull the blankets up around you or anything like that, but something that sets you, the hairs on your back on edge, something like that. And that, it doesn't have to be a monster, doesn't have to be a ghost. It can just be even in a turn of phrase that just makes you think about something in a different way, in a kind of dark and twisted way, give you an outlook on life. I like that. And the other thing that I can say I don't like in a story is the thing that you tend to get in a romance, which is the happy ending, the predictable happy ending. With horror, you can have an open ending, you can have a horrific ending, a sad ending, and I like that. I like the fact that you don't really know what you're going to get, and even when you get there, it can go in the opposite direction. I quite like to get to the end of a story
and then make a U-turn. Oh, it seems that we have lost our guest for the moment. Not sure where he's at. But I guess I'll keep talking here. We do have some more questions from the listening audience to go through. If we can get Steve back on. We've had a good little piece of time here without any technical interruptions, so I guess it was inevitable that we got another one. But hopefully he will be back on the line here shortly. In the meantime, the book that we're talking about, the most tonight, is called Diavolino, D-I-A-V-O. Now I forgot how to spell it. I'll have to look here. D-I-A-V-O-L-I-N-O, Diavolino. And it's by Steve Emmett, and it's available as an ebook or printed version. It's a very good book with a twisted ending that I really wasn't anticipating. And even though, well, no, that'd be a spoiler if I said anything about that. Okay, Steve, are you back? Steve? No, not there. Well, we seem to have lost him. And let's see, what else do we have? If you want to check out the book that I put out, go to http://bit.ly/Time of Chaos. I'm giving it away free today and tomorrow. So go ahead and hit that, and hopefully we'll have Steve back here in a minute. But we don't know yet.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. I'm so glad to hear you back. I was kind of rambling on here.
I think the fault was at my end this time.
Well, whatever it was, I'm just glad to hear that you're back. So we're running low on time here. I'm going to pop you back in here with questions that we have. Let's see. You set your novel Diavolino in Italy, and the person, Anne from the UK, said that she knows that you live there and that you plan to set other novels there. What is it about Italy that's such a special place for you?
It is a combination of things. It's the history, it's the beauty, it's the light, it's the contradictions and the way in which even today the Catholic Church has such a hold over the people who live there, even though Italy is a secular society. Are you still with me, Gia?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, okay. Funny noise there. I like the people, I like the weather, I like the food, I like the wine, I like the way of life. And, the light, Gia, is just fabulous. I miss that light. Here we have darkness and rain for about 10.5 months of the year, and I do miss that.
Uh-huh. Well, having lived most of my life in the southwestern part of the United States, I have to admit that I had a special, difficult time adapting to the frequent rain, the high humidity in the south when I moved to New Orleans and then to Mississippi. But Arizona and New Mexico is much drier. The sunlight's really intense compared to this. It's the southwestern part of the United States is high on drama. And I would say that if I had to choose just a one word to describe the landscape in the South, I would say mysterious.
It's what?
Mysterious. It's land.
Mysterious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very secretive land. The Southwest fools you with the drama, and in the South, it's got this secretive nature about it that always makes you wonder what's really under those lines.
Don't you have the bayous and things there?
We have the what?
The bayou.
Well, actually, we say bayou.
Oh, bayou, is it?
Yeah, the bayou. The bayous with their gators and their other things. Spending most of my life on the desert. I'm really suspicious of water.
Uh-huh.
And, we lived on the coast the first couple of years that we lived in Mississippi. We spent a lot of time fishing in the bayou, coastal bayous and whatnot. And, as a woman, you have to drink a lot because you're out there. It has an inevitable result. So, there you are trying to perch yourself on the edge of the boat to do your thing. And I always have this vision. Either I'm going to fall in and get eaten by a shark, or a gator is going to come get me. I mean, one or the other is going to happen, surely, because there's sea monsters in the water. I will never probably get over that. I used to be boat phobic, so I have improved. I can go out on a boat now. I've never gone offshore yet, but I can go out in the boat in the coastal bayous without a problem.
Uh-huh.
And, it's an entirely different alien world from what I was used to on the desert. Because on the desert, it was like the rocks and the plants and everything, animals, they all told me something. And I'm not talking in a creepy hearing voices in my head way. or talking rocks or whatever, Each thing tells you how much rain comes here, how recently soil's been disturbed, what altitude you're at, all sorts of stuff. Really relevant information if you're hiking or camping or I come from a cowboy family, so the terrain was really important. When I would arrive to visit my grandfather, I was supposed to give a full report on rainfall from where I lived to where he lived, and know how recently it had fallen and how much, green stuff was growing, foliage was growing. And if I didn't, it was good for at least a 2-hour lecture. So, that was just something that was part of our life.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this whole fascination with the terrain. Now, the next question comes from Margaret, and she wants to know, how did you become a writer of fiction? Did you ever live or work in Italy, which you've already answered, and what you are writing now, which you've already answered. So how did you become a fiction writer?
How did I become a fiction writer? I just decided to do it. I think I said early on that I'd become very disillusioned with what I was doing. It didn't satisfy me. And I had the chance to change, so I decided I would write. Didn't know how to write, so I signed up to a novel writing course and did that, and the result of that course was Diavolino, which I finished soon after. So that's how I became a writer. And what was the other part of the question? I didn't quite catch it.
The other part of the question was, well, actually, you've already answered them. Did you ever live or work in Italy? You told us that. And what are you writing now? You've also covered that.
Okay.
So the very last question that we're even going to touch on is about something, and these are going to be Italian names, so I might slaughter them, so be forewarned. Can you give your views on recent Italian politics, and in particular Beppe Grillo?
Beppe Grillo.
Whatever it is. His success and how Berlusconi still gets huge support.
Berlusconi. Mm. Where did that question come
again, I know nothing about. Pardon?
Did that question come from the UK or from Italy?
It came from Derek in Glasgow.
Oh, it came from Derek in Glasgow. Okay. Can I give my thoughts on it? Yes. I mean, Beppe Grillo is basically a comedian who started a movement of a political party, a sort of anti-political party, because he was completely fed up with professional politicians in Italy. If you think politicians in the States are bad, and we think politicians in the UK are bad, you've not seen anything till you've seen the Italian politicians. I mean, if I were to say there were a bunch of lying, deceitful, selfish crooks, it might be a bit of an exaggeration, but you might say we've got them as well. But it seems to be a characteristic of them, which has gone on and on and on, and they just take and look after themselves, and there's corruption and cronyism and so on, which has just really got everybody down. Or should I say it's got 50% of the people down. And that was the 50% of the electorate that voted for Beppe Grillo, the comedian. And then you get the others, which is the answer to why does Berlusconi continue to get votes. Well, probably the best way to describe that is just to give you one of those little stories. I remember when he appeared on television and he said that the reason there were so many rapes in Rome was that there were too many beautiful women around. And when the whole of Europe was kind of shocked that a political leader would come out with this tripe in this day and age, all the men in the bars in Italy were sort of punching each other and saying, yeah, good old Silvio. And that's where he gets his other votes from, what I would call the unthinking, macho Italian who likes the way that he is. So I did either a Facebook or a Twitter post at the time when the result was announced, and I had a picture of Beppe Grillo alongside a picture of Berlusconi. And I seem to remember I put a caption underneath one that said, Italian joker wins election, and under the other one, another Italian joker wins election, or something like that. Two jokers coming from opposite ends. But the political situation in Italy is a disgrace.
I think that's kind of everybody's question nationwide. I know that recently rapes have really been on our news here too, and some politicians have really put their foot in their mouth by implying, and this is an old problem that's been true, that rape victims are at fault because men couldn't restrain themselves. And I'm like, if men can't restrain themselves and behave appropriately, why are we giving them guns and putting them in the military, and why are we electing them to office?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously they need to all be locked away someplace safe because they can't control themselves, which is ridiculous too. But I guess the point I was trying to make was that two ridiculous points of view, just, neither one is correct.
Indeed.
And that really is excusing a rapist behavior by saying they can't control themselves is ridiculous because of their gender. I mean, stupid. That is really stupid. I could not believe that men were saying such things.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
can you imagine having a prime minister saying that?
Well, no. It'd be like our president saying it, but we've got senators and representatives of Congress saying it, which, that's, for us, getting quite up there.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Judges, and so forth and so on. And the whole idea that rape is permissible and it's the victim's fault is really wrong and outdated. And, we need to just do something about it. And we're seeing some slow changes in the U.S., and I'm sure that's true in Europe as well, about the way rapists are regarded and whether or not the victim is to have fingers pointed at her. And I say her because most rapes are man on woman, but there are other ones that do occur too. But, the whole thing is that it's not the victim's fault. So, you want to tell everybody real quick where to find your blog, where to find your book, and we kind of run out of time.
Yeah, my website, blog is steve-emmett.com, and you get my book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the other online places. There are links on my website.
Okay.
Okay.
It is available as an ebook as well, and
it is.
Folks, I'm really advocating ebooks because they're environmentally friendly.
And they're easy to read.
Okay. Easy to read, and they're very convenient. You don't have to wait for the book to come in. It's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that instant satisfaction that we all love so much.
It's so easy to spend your money that way.
Yeah, it is. Well, folks, unfortunately, we have run out of time all too quickly again. But I hope that tonight's program has given you a little bit of entertainment, plenty of food for thought, as well as more illumination for your personal journey towards truth. Tune in again next time as we bring another guest, another topic, and a whole new idea for your consideration. We'll have another author next week as we continue our author conversations series. Tonight, you've been listening to The Dawn of Shades, and I am your host, Gia Scott, and good night.
Presented by Climate Power Education Fund. Does Big Oil care about our streets flooding or our homes burning? Not according to an ExxonMobil top lobbyist.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. We were looking out for our shareholders.
They care about profits, not people. Learn more at polluters.exposed.
Team USA is training hard and ready for the Olympic Games. And so is Jacob.
Woo! I've got my lucky shirt and Xfinity Flex.
Oh, yeah. Jacob's family got Xfinity Internet with the best Wi-Fi for their home and a Flex 4K streaming box free, plus Peacock Premium included. So Jacob is ready for anything.
Go Team USA!
With medal ceremonies, highlights, interviews, and more, plus all his favorite streaming apps in one place.
Can your internet do that?
Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Peacock subscription required.
Xfinity, proud partner of Team USA.